There aren't many classics about the very particular nature of the mother-daughter relationship. The Mom in Pride and Prejudice is silly, even though they do have a certain version of the mother-daughter relationship, with her telling them what they should want and them basically ignoring her. The Mom in Little Women is more advising them about fortitude and how to be good Christian women. But those stories and most of the other ones like that don't meet the criteria of a classic in the sense that they feel timeless. Some of those themes, some of those tensions between mothers and daughters have changed drastically over the years. And yes, you could argue that it's still mothers wanting daughters to live whatever a good life is and trying to influence them either by what they restrict from them or by giving them verbal guidance. But I just wanted a classic that felt closer to a modern relationship. And the perfect modern classic for that kind of mother-daughter relationship is The Joy Luck Club by Amy Tan. The good thing that classics do is that they tell these sort of universal stories that survive hundreds of years because they're versions of life that we keep living over and over again. But the only classics don't have to be 200 years old. They don't have to be 1,000 years old. They can be 30 plus years old. And I know that 1989 does not feel that far away. It was a long time ago. When we were kids, 30 years before Martin Luther King Jr. was alive. It's a long time ago now, guys. In this modern classic series, I am going to make the argument that there is a modern classic, more modern classic, that's telling a story that we need told and that is surviving through the decades because it is telling one of those important stories. Amy Tan takes us across an ocean. She takes us through decades, but the same love, loss, the same tension between mothers and daughters is waiting for us on either side. So this was Amy Tan's debut novel, and it was a massive success. There were 27 printings of the hardcover, and it's been translated into 171 languages. The daughters in this story are June, Rose, Waverly, and Lena. And the mothers are Suyan, Anne May, Lindo, and Ying Yang. The mothers had immigrated to San Francisco from China in the 1940s because of political upheaval back home. They've befriended one another and their families have grown up together, and they all play mahjong, with each of the mothers taking one of the positions on the table. When the story opens, June's mother, Suyan, has just died, and the other three women are asking that she take Suyan's position on the mahjong table. June's caught completely off guard. She says, how can I possibly take my mother's place when I barely knew my mother? Because she feels that the divide between where her mother came from and the way of thinking that she brought with her and June's way of thinking in this Americanized version of her life were at odds her entire life. They never seem to have understood one another. And then the book goes through each mother's story and where they all came from and the circumstances under which they were led into a really difficult life, then eventually led them to immigration to the United States. Then after we've told each one of the mother stories, we then have the perspective from the daughters who go into flashbacks, who tell us about where their lives are today and how having grown up as the children of immigrants has affected how they are, how they present in the world, their relationships, from the perspective of how their mothers have affected that, because the dads are just kind of in the background. This entire story is very much about the women. And then they move to flashbacks to their childhood and what that looked like. June's mother, for instance, was always comparing her to Waverly, who was a child chess prodigy, and saying, well, you must have some kind of hidden talent, and this pride in your children is very much a Chinese thing, where their children's accomplishments are seen as being their accomplishments as well, which is also a universal theme, right? And she would have her try all of these things and force her into discovering this very special thing about herself. And June the entire time just wants to be normal. She doesn't want anything special. And so she pretends and she fakes, and it culminates in this really embarrassing scene for everybody. Meanwhile, the entire time, Waverly is getting fed up with her mom for being so proud of her all of the time, for showing her off all the time. She just wants to be left alone. And the mothers don't understand any of it. You are supposed to take pride in your family. You are supposed to honor your mother. I'm supposed to show you off. Why are you reacting negatively to something that is positive? The stories of the mothers in particular are very heartbreaking. They all came from a different country that lived under very different conditions in some circumstances, where they all came from a different time and place where women had much fewer rights, and their mothers were doing the best that they could for them or what they thought was right. But very often it resulted in abusive situations or feelings of abandonment, confusion, and fear, not understanding what was to become of them. Eventually, the women are able to take their lives into their own hands and live their own stories outside of what their family and their mothers had set up for them. But it's a journey. It's a journey that takes them across time and across the sea. And while their daughters' stories aren't as complex as theirs, the weight of their mother's beginnings is still a theme seen throughout their lives. What Amy Tan is talking about often with these characters are the eternal struggles that we are in with our family, very often with our mother, that results in feelings that affect who we are for the rest of our lives. The feelings of being a disappointment. There's your family wanting to give you the best chance, and instead they end up breaking your heart. Everyone wanting so badly to be understood and always feeling misunderstood. And under the weight of all of these expectations, you start trying to disappear and then spend a life feeling like you've become invisible. And everybody in this story is trying to escape some kind of ghost. The ghost of what they did, the ghost of what was done to them, and all they do by trying to avoid it and go around it is create more ghosts. They made a movie out of this one. It stars a lot of really well-known Asian actresses and actors at that time. It's really well done. It's pretty faithful to the story. There were just a couple of outcomes that they changed that I don't know why they changed them. Well, one of them, I know why they changed them. One of the women who in the book does not reconcile with her husband, does reconcile with her husband. I feel like they changed it because it felt better, happy ending and all that stuff, but she never should have stayed with him. In the book especially, he was a dirtbag, and you're gonna know who I'm talking about. But there's one scene in particular in the movie that is absolutely insane. It's what one of the mothers does to a baby that she had in China. It is wild, and it is not what happens in the book. You have to read the book and you have to watch the movie so that you know what I'm talking about. And you can come in the comments and you can tell me that was insane, and we can agree. I get that it was probably to make it more, I don't know, to make it more something, probably to add more emotion. But when I tell you this story is full of so much emotion, there are so many difficult things that these women go through. It is so hard to watch them live through pain for so long. You didn't need to add more. These women are barely hanging on. What are you doing? In there is ultimately the salvation, right? Is that by sticking together, you make it through somehow, or you save one another, or you make it through on your own to find comfort within your relationship with your daughter, with the other women in your life. Women are so important to a woman's life. And that's the thing I love the most about this story. Even the moms who have like a little bit of a competitive relationship love each other so deeply. And that's the part about some older classics that I feel like is very vitally missing, in that so many of the women characters are one-dimensional, and we're not. It's so complex. And so I hope that you guys have the opportunity to turn to this more modernized version of women and that you love it as much as I did. The next modern classic we're going to talk about also has women in it, but it's a little more spooky. So hopefully you stick around to find out what it is.